Hello friends, my name's Emile and welcome back to some more Forza Top Gear laps. Today we're taking a look at some retro supercars, starting off the supercar saga, which is going to be continuing on next time with modern supercars, but today it's all about retro supercars. We start with the Jaguar XJ220, 542 horsepower, 3,241 pounds of weight. This is the second heaviest car here today. However, it is also the second least powerful, so on paper at least it doesn't really bode well for today. However, despite that, the XJ220 is actually quite good to drive. I do like the XJ220 actually. A bit of an unfortunate supercar, this one really. It sort of came along at the wrong time. It came along in a financial crisis, and then 18 months later it was essentially completely destroyed by the McLaren F1 and never really heard from again. But luckily the XJ220 these days is starting to get the recognition it deserves. So while it may be good to drive, it does suffer from some slight understeer. The other big issue with the XJ220 is the brakes. Brakes on this car not particularly good. Does not get stopped quite as quickly as I'd want it to. The XJ220 in real life is known to have pretty poor brakes. It's known to be a bit of a cruiser more than an actual sort of scrap of your neck supercar. So I guess that sort of plays into it. It also has longish gears, but most of the cars here today do as well. But overall, I did like my time with the XJ220. Next up, a Bugatti EB110 Supersport, 611 horsepower, 3,126 pounds. Back in its day, the EB110 was one of the most sophisticated, most technologically advanced cars of its time. Often a bit of a forgotten supercar though, the EB110. Definitely a strange looking thing, I will give it that, but again, I do kind of like it. The Bugatti actually is very good though, very good to drive actually, this one. It is better than the XJ220 when it comes to the driving. I mean, it's got more power, 611 horsepower, you know, that makes this one of the more powerful vehicles here today, third most powerful here today. You know, that is 611's more than quite a few of the modern supercars have, so yeah, and only 3,126 pounds. It is lighter than most of the modern supercars as well. So, yeah, that's definitely in its favour. Four-wheel drive, actually. Interestingly enough, the EB110, unlike the XJ220, which is mid-engine rear drive. And again, four-wheel drive only adds on to the goodness of this vehicle because it can just jump off the line. Yeah, I really do quite like driving the EB110. It's definitely, like I said, it's a bit of an oddball choice when it comes to the supercars. In fact, both the XJ and the EB are, but both are good cars. However, in my personal opinion, when it comes to driving experience, they both get blown out of the water a little bit by this. The Ferrari F50, 513 horsepower, 2,712 pounds of weight. This is the least powerful vehicle here today. It's also one of the more lighter vehicles. 2,712 pounds is not a lot, but it definitely isn't the lightest. The question is though, do I really care? No. Do you want to know why? Because the F50 is excellent when it comes to its handling. There isn't much when it comes to supercars that can rival the F50 when it comes to the corners. This thing is just so damn nice to drive. Really is just phenomenal to drive. I often compare the F50 to the F40 quite a bit for obvious reasons. The F40 is a little bit worse through the corners, but in my honest opinion, a little bit quicker. The F50 certainly lacks the acceleration and speed that some of these other vehicles have here today. And unfortunately, Top Gear does have two very large straights, and that means that the F50 can struggle against these cars, and it will struggle against them, but just through the corners. Nothing here today was nicer than the F50 when it came to its driving characteristics. Go drive the F50, go build up an F50, because these things make great S-Class race cars as well. Next up, a McLaren F1 GT, 618 horsepower, 2,469 pounds of weight. Second most powerful car here today, second lightest as well, so this thing does bode a pretty darn well. We had, of course, the standard McLaren F1 go around quite a long time ago, and that set a pretty decent time of 120.065, I believe, is what that car has set, and the F1 GT is obviously a bit of an evolution to that car. The F1 GT does drive pretty darn similar to the standard F1. It is a little bit quicker here and there, it's more aerodynamic, so as you'd expect it is a little bit quicker in certain places. The standard F1, it's a decent handling car, it can let go if you push it a bit too hard. It's nowhere near as forgiving as the F50 or even the XJ220, but it is quicker than both of those cars, considerably. In fact, you know, if you get this thing right, this you just see it through there, this thing is monstrously quick. The F1 GT really can sort of rival you modern supercars. I mean, hell, sort of your lower end hype cars can get a little bit scared of the F1 GT. This thing is pretty darn incredible. However, it is nowhere near as incredible as our next car, which is the Nissan R390, 550 horsepower and 2,264 pounds of weight. This is the lightest vehicle here today. The R390, I've got this written down in my notes, and it's honestly what I think of this car. It is frighteningly, strangely quick. It is just so strange on how quick this thing is. It is stupidly quick accelerating, it's stupidly quick through the corners, but similar to, say, a Ferrari 458 Speciale, doesn't really feel it. You know, when you drive this car, it isn't the nicest car to drive in the world, you know. It will slide a little bit, it will let go. It's not quite as nice to drive as the F1 GT. However, for whatever reason, this thing just is a monster around the track, you know. Again, this car is S800 PI, I think, so yeah. The sort of entry-level hypercars really do get very scared when it comes to the R390. The R390 could scare some of the more modern hypercar stalwarts even. This thing's just stupid crazy fast, and I have no idea how it does it. It may be the lightest car here today, but 550 horsepower is not a lot. I mean, the next car, the most powerful car, has 100 more horsepower than this, but this thing is just so stupidly quick, and I just do not understand it. My brain does not comprehend anything that car does. Next up, we have the Ferrari Enzo, 650 horsepower, 3,086 pounds of weight. That means that this is the most powerful vehicle here today with 650 horsepower, which is quite a lot. I mean, that's more than a McLaren 650S. So yeah, a lot of power in the Enzo. How does the Enzo drive? Ultimately, it drives very similar to the MC12. We had the MC12 go around in the Italian Cars episode quite a few weeks ago, actually, maybe even months at this point. In fact, it is months at this point anyways. The MC12 was a very fantastic car to drive. The Enzo is pretty darn good as well. It's a little bit worse through the corners, admittedly. It doesn't quite have the grip of the MC12. It doesn't quite have the poise. It doesn't quite have just the ease of use that MC12 has. However, the Enzo is quicker in a straight line because it's, you know, it hasn't got any aerodynamics, or as much aerodynamics going on as the MC12 did. The MC12 is also, apologies for that, and not the microphone. The MC12 is also less powerful, so this is obviously quicker in a straight line. Whether that will give it the advantage over the MC12, we will have to see. Again, it is that a little bit worse through the corners. But the Enzo is still a pretty decent car. And we end today with a bit of a disappointment, actually. This is the Porsche Carrera GT, 605 horsepower, 3,258 pounds weight, the heaviest car here today. And to be fair, actually, 3,258 pounds really is not a lot of weight. That is quite a light car. The Carrera GT, though, honestly, isn't very nice to drive. It suffers from snap oversteer. Now, you wouldn't expect that from the Carrera GT. I certainly wasn't expecting it. I remember when I drove this thing for the first time and I was like, you know, it doesn't handle particularly amazingly well, but, you know, maybe that's just me remembering it wrong. Maybe that's, you know, again, sometimes I remember cars as being not particularly great, like the Holden Commodore, and it turns out that thing is fantastic last time I drove it, so maybe I was hoping the Carrera GT might be much of the same, because I do like the Carrera GT. It makes a fantastic V10 noise. You can hear it. It sounds amazing, this car. But it's just not a great car to drive. It's snap oversteers, 605 horsepower. You know, it's a lot of power, but compared to some of the cars here today, it really isn't, you know, on the face of it. It is a quick car, don't get me wrong, but with the handling issues, you would be much better off going with something else. You know, there are plenty of cars here today which I would recommend over this car, to the point where I'd say this is probably the worst car of today, which is a bit of a shame to say. On to the times, and the Nissan R390. is the fastest car today, going in second with a 1:17.574. Extraordinarily quick time there. Beats the previous second place, the 458 Speciale, by 0.7 of a second. Bear in mind that car was also just stupidly quick for no apparent reason. The R390 is just insane. The F1 GT, though, certainly isn't bad either, going into 5th with 1:18.538. Does miss out on its stablemate, the CLK GTR, by just a fraction, but it does beat the MC12, which is pretty impressive. A car that couldn't beat the MC12, however, is the Ferrari Enzo, which finds itself in 9th place with 1:19.239. While it couldn't beat the MC12, it's still a pretty impressive time, beats out Celine S7. Bugatti EB110 Supersport also does pretty darn well for itself, 11th with a 1:19.768. Beats the Lamborghini Murcielago SV by 5,000th of a second, which is just extraordinary, but the EB110 is very good to drive indeed. The Carrera GT finds itself a bit lowly in 17th place, going there with a 1:20.573. Still a decent-ish time, does beat out a 12C. Ironically, it is slower than a 911 GT3 though, so there you go, make of that what you will. Going down the board, we find the rest of today's cars. The XJ220 in 26th with 1:21.490, and the F50 in 27th with 1:21.572. As you can see, the F50 did lose out to the F40 in the end, but I still stick by that F50 for being a fantastic car to drive. The XJ220, if it had a bit better brakes and maybe slightly less understeer, it could totally beat that Audi R8. You know, I think that R8 just scraped through by pure luck alone. So, yeah, overall, very good showings from all of the cars here today. The question is, how will their modern counterparts hold up next time when we take a look at some modern supercars? As always, friends, if you have suggestions for episodes or themes you'd like to see, please leave them down below in the comment section. With that all being said, thank you all very much for watching. My name has been the Real Emile, and until next time, farewell.